As you heard this morning, two keynote speakers, one from IBM Research, one from HP Research. So you got a very detailed and holistic view of two large IT companies sharing with you the IT technology and IT services future. Now let me introduce you our third keynote speaker who has a very unique background and expertise. And this one comes from a venture capital, one of the founding leader of venture capital in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, all of you know, is a place of innovation for regions like we have many large IT company technology leaders located here. We have two top universities in the world, Stanford and Berkeley. And the third ingredient is we are the home of the large VC companies and VC leaders. And the next speaker, Tim Draper, is one of those leaders who has, in fact, his father was Bill Draper, was one of the sort of founding VC godfather of the Silicon Valley, and Tim has carried that mission to the next level. So about Tim, you can see his bio and background on Google for multiple pages you can see, but one thing I know about Tim is he is a very smart, very successful VC leader, but even more important is someone who cares deeply about the value of technology to the society at large. And with that, let me introduce Tim.
Thank you very much. That's a kind introduction. Well, this will be a little different because I'm in the venture capital business, and I don't run a big research organization, but I kind of do. But my research organization is to go around and see all the different things that are going on in the little incubators and little holes in the wall all over the world. And it has been a great experience, and I've gone out throughout my career and promoted entrepreneurship and venture capital and new technologies everywhere I go. I go and put together business plan competitions, and what's interesting now is how prolific it is around the world, and it's become a very symbiotic relationship with larger companies, particularly because it's been very difficult for these smaller companies to get liquidity in any way other than being, in effect, research for all of you. So if you come away with anything from this, it is that I think you guys should also be out there swarming the world for these little entrepreneurs, because the not invented here syndrome is a very lonely place to be. You have a very difficult time when you're just going after one thing all by yourself without seeing all the other things that are happening in the world. So hopefully I'll open things up for you a little bit, and you'll get a chance to see some of the other things that are happening in the world. Other thing I wanted to mention is that that the world is changing faster and faster, and you guys know that better than anybody. As we change faster and faster, there are more and more people involved in that change, and so there's a geometric effect, and that means that we all have to be very relatively quick on our feet. But as we all know, research takes time, and so you have to be thinking well ahead of the curve when you do your research. So I'm going to start with your customer. This is my daughter. She's Jessie Draper. She's the Valley Girl. She interviews people everywhere from Eric Schmidt to Ted Turner to MC Hammer to whoever. And she does it in a very silly way. But the reason she's your customer is she's an entrepreneur. She's an innovator. And she is going around, she's buying software or using software and having that software help drive her business. So she's a Twitteraholic. She works on Facebook like crazy. She is looking at CRM packages. She, as her business grows, she needs all of these things. She is looking at enterprise social packages. Everything she does now is what you guys should be thinking of. She's sort of a rising media star, and media is changing in a big way, and all of her and you guys become her supplier. She's also inundated with email, and I'm inundated with email, and all of you are inundated with email. And I don't think there are enough researchers working on that problem.
You need more email?
Yeah, I'm Tim at dfj.com. Just blast me with everything you got. Okay, so the world's changing faster and faster. Moore's law says that $1,000 worth of compute power doubles every 18 months. And now it's doubling every 14, even every 12 months. So every year, we double the capacity. We double the ability to do something. And so every year, we're really going to have a whole new platform to work on for software. Every year. Software development, your software development teams come up with products, I don't know, every 2 years. You're going to miss a whole cycle. So think about that as you're moving forward in time. So let's go, I'll give you a little example of human change. We humans are going to have to change significantly. If I'm talking into the wall and it's 1450 in Salem, Massachusetts, they burn me as a witch. If I'm talking into the wall in Berkeley, California in 1972, I'm stoned. If I'm talking into the wall today, I've got a cell phone. So we humans are adapting to new technologies. Those are 3 interesting technologies. But we humans are adapting to technologies in many ways. And as a result, we as researchers have to think way ahead. If we're going to put our team, if we're going to focus our team on something, it's got to be really important, and it's got to be kind of out there, because it's going to take some time to get there. And by the time you're there, you don't want 2 iterations of Moore's law to have passed you by. And that Moore's law, that happens in every industry. That's not just IT, that's everywhere. And the reason that I can say that is, I just think back to the cavemen. Cavemen, they had these, some lightning struck this little tree, and they had fire, and they thought, hey, that's really cool. And then somebody figured out that they could move fire. And then a cow fell into the fire, and the guy goes, well, I'm going to eat it anyway. And so then they eat the cow. Well, not in India, sorry, but they eat the cow, and they go, well, it's good, and the meat lasted a little longer, but it tasted a little like charcoal. And so then they created sort of a bowl they could put on top of the fire, and then Moore's law continued, and we have gourmet cookware. So it moves along. It moves very quickly. Whenever there's a new technology, the last one gets leapfrogged. So think about all the inventions that have happened in the last 150 years. Okay, and how much those have changed our lives. I mean, everything from the light bulb to indoor plumbing, radio, automobile, television, jets, the pill, the bomb, microwave, ICs, satellites, photocopier, space travel, computers, email, fiber optics, biotech, cell phones, MRIs, internet, digital cameras, web browsers, search engines, and now smartphones. These have changed our world immeasurably in the past 150 years. So with Moore's law, the next 15 years we'll have, and the same amount of breakthroughs. So the amount of change our world has had in the last 150 years, it will have in the next 15 years, and maybe the next 2 years after that. So imagine a world with, where you get desalinated water. And we were talking earlier about energy prices shooting up. Well, what if we actually figure out how to get a near infinite energy supply? Green buildings, better batteries. I mentioned self-navigating cars, and when I was in China, they said, how about flying self-navigating cars? Google's already got a self-navigating car shooting around. Interactive education. I think this is going to be a major breakthrough. I think people are going to be educated on their computer and babysat in the classroom, or tutored. Cloud computing, everything's going to be up in the cloud. Your medical, everything's going to be up there in the cloud. They're going to predict what genetic disease you have, and hopefully they'll have a cure for heart disease, AIDS, malaria, cancer, whatever. And those breakthroughs will happen, and we're going to live much longer lives. The average life in 1850 was throughout the world, about 25 years. And it has grown almost on a straight line up to where now it's about 80 years. And that means that sort of for every 3 years, you will live another year. So live 3 years, get one free. Non-invasive surgery, non-invasive security. We had a company we invested in that you go through the security gates, and the guy behind the screen sees you completely naked. All sorts of applications for that. Near thought communications. Okay, it's not working yet, but it will be. New life forms, food drop. I always thought people could just say, hey, food, drop. I was always hungry as a kid. I didn't want to stop playing, and so I guess I never stopped. So for the 2 years after that, and this is what you guys should be focused on, which is a little weird. Time travel, wormholes, transporter, holodeck, a cure for death, Martian colonies. What else? Be out there, because if you're doing lab work today, you know how long it's going to be before that lab work reaches the marketplace. You've got to project out in all sorts of ways what kinds of outrageous things you can come up with that are going to change the market. Okay, the other piece of this is that this used to be very research and the evolution of technology was really focused on very heavily on places like the Silicon Valley and Route 128 in Massachusetts. It wasn't spread throughout the world, but the world has opened up. Geographic borders are falling. Governments actually have to compete with each other for bright minds like you guys, and capital and businesses and entrepreneurs of the world. They have to go become salespeople. So the governments of the world are now becoming salespeople. For some reason, Europe hasn't woken up to that fact, and the United States hasn't woken up to that fact, but every other country in the world is saying, oh, venture capitalists, come to our country. Entrepreneur, come to our country. Researcher, come to our country. Oh, you're smart? Come to our country. They are recruiting very heavily the great minds in the capital of the world. Very interesting to see. So what do these Silicon Valley great companies have in common? You guys represent some of these. They all had foreign-born founders. And so the US really, and the Silicon Valley really has been the mecca for very creative, exciting, entrepreneurial people to come and make their way and create great things from nothing. So globalization's on the rise. The tallest buildings in Dubai, largest passenger airlines from Europe, largest traded companies in Beijing, the biggest oil companies in China. The largest investment group is in, this is going way too fast for me. Richest guys in Mexico, the Bollywood's bigger than Hollywood. All of these things are happening. The world's completely open. You can do great things in any part of the world. Now I'm going to tell a couple of quick stories about my experiences in various countries around the world so that you kind of get a flavor for both what I do and how some of these companies kind of get started. Hotmail was two young guys that came into our office. They had one idea. It was not a very good idea. And then they were on their way out and they said, well, we have this other idea. And the other idea was web-based email. And we said, oh, well, that's kind of interesting. And then they said, and we think we're going to give it away for free. And we said, okay, and then? And they said, oh, that's it. Give it away for free. And make it up on volume. So we kind of gave them some money because they were interesting enough. And then in the second board meeting, I guess, they said, okay, it's up. And that means all you people, all those people out on the web can now get free email. And I said, well, how are you going to tell them about it? And they said things like, well, how about TV ads and billboards on 101? And I said, well, we just gave you like $100,000 and that one billboard, 1 month, $100,000 gone. And I thought, God, how do you spread the word here? Can you just blast everybody in that internet world? And they said, oh no, that would be spamming. So I learned a new term. And then I said, well, what if you just put a little message on the bottom of everybody's screen that says, P.S. I love you, get your free email at Hotmail. And they looked at me like, okay, we talked to 21 investors. Why did we end up with you? And I kept pounding on it because I thought, gosh, but if I send it to you, you send it to him, he sends it to his friends, they send it to their friends, it starts to spread. And it took a while, but then finally I just kept pounding. And once I get an idea, they're rare, but once I get an idea, I really let them have it. So anyway, they said, okay, we'll do it, but no P.S. I love you. And I said, well, it won't be as loving a world. We'll probably have more wars, but okay. So we spread it, and within 3 weeks we had, within 11 months we had 18 million users, but and that was the fastest growing property in the world to that date. And then the founder was Indian, and he sent an email to his friend in India, and within 3 weeks we had 100,000 registered Hotmail users in India. And if you remember, 1994-95, there were not maybe even 100,000 computers in India. So this was really something. We were somehow communicating with a lot of people very quickly. Since then, I've been to India several times, and I'm going to tell you a quick fun story. If you go to India, anyway, my partner said, okay, are you ready to cross an Indian street? And I said, okay. And he goes, okay. And I start walking across, and of course the cow is moving in front of me, and the elephant, and the guy on the bike with a thing behind it, and the cars, and the motorcycles, and the scooters, and the bikes, and everybody's going in different directions, and I get halfway across, and I see an opening, and I run across, and I get to the other side, and he goes, no! And I said, what? He said, no sudden movements. So right there, I realized that everyone in India is doing ongoing differential calculus in their head as they walk across the street. That will be just a gold mine of software engineers. So now I'll take you to China. My first trip to China was with my dad. He was with the UNDP, and we went to China, and we arrived, and we got in the only car that went on the only paved road to the only hotel that had toilets we were used to in all of China, called the Friendship Hotel. That was 25 years ago. And then I went back about 15 years later, 10 years later, And I noticed that, well, there were more roads and things were kind of moving along a little bit better. Deng Xiaoping had done his thing. And I had this trip from Shanghai to Hangzhou. And it was about a 3-hour trip at that time. Now it's about an hour and a half. But it was a long, boring trip. And I was looking out the window and I was thinking, God, all these houses, they're all 2-story concrete tilt-ups. Just open 2-story concrete. Then I saw this one and it had a blue window and a spire and a little driveway. And I thought, well, that's interesting, a little progress. I kept going, and then there was another one, same thing, blue window, spire, little driveway. Kept going. Then there was a block of blue windows, spires, and driveways, and the driveways had all connected. And I thought, oh, wow, 2 things. The blue window salesman is going to make a fortune. And the second thing I thought was, this is a little like the US in the 1950s. It was keeping up with the Joneses. Oh, you got a blue window? I need a blue window. You got a refrigerator? I need a refrigerator. You've got Wi-Fi? I need Wi-Fi. You got a smart web phone? I need a smart web phone. And so I thought, we've got to invest here. And so we started investing in China. It was very interesting because we thought, okay, well, it's a new place and we really need, government protection. And so we invested in 3 guys, our first 3 investments, companies that had entrepreneurs who said, I've got really good government connections. And you can guess, we lost all that money. But then we thought, well, what do we really do? Well, we back these young people with clever, creative ideas, and so then we started to do that. And these people started to come up with very interesting, clever, creative things, and those ended up being Kongzhong and Baidu and Focus Media and Yipei and a whole rash of great entrepreneurial companies that have become now household words in China. And of course, China has just exploded since then and has really opened its wall. Here's the wall, but it's opened it up. Now I'm going to tell you another story, and this is Estonia. I was in Palo Alto, and I told my good friend Tony Perkins that I would speak at one of his conferences. And then it turned out that there was this little startup, and it was a very important board meeting, and I had to be in Estonia at the same time. What some other to do. So what I did was I went back to my friend and I said, I'm sorry, I don't think I can do this unless you want me to do like a teleconference in the middle of the night in Estonia. I hear these teleconferences work okay, it might be a little flaky. And he goes, oh yeah, that's great idea. And then he goes, hey, can you get that guy Nicholas to come on the teleconference with you, the guy who's running Skype? And I said, yeah, I'd be happy to. And so Nicholas said, sure. And then he said, at that time, Skype was very small and it was just voice. And he said, well, we've been working on something. And I said, well, what? He said, we've been working on video conferencing. And I said, yeah, but we got this conference, this has to work. And he goes, oh yeah. No, I think it's going to work. I think it will work better than the other solutions. And then he goes and he says, I think we should try this. And I said, okay, what the heck, I hope we have a phone backup is all I was thinking. And then he went ahead and he goes, I know this is going to work. And I said, why? And he said, because we're shutting down all the Skype phone lines so that we have the entire Skype network to run our video conference on. And it went off without a hitch, and ultimately eBay was in the audience there, and they actually ended up buying it. So now I'm going to take you to Egypt. I've loved Egypt. I went and saw the pyramids. I get a little claustrophobic, so I don't go inside the tombs, but it's a wonderful country, and it had a big revolution. And it was all about technology. Technology wins all the wars. Wars used to be by force, right? Now wars are influence and get your people more free so that they can do more cool things. And there was the Orange Revolution. I actually got a chance to be the first foreigner to step onto Ukraine property without a visa because there was President what's his name? Anyway, the guy who ran the Orange Revolution. And I asked him about the revolution, and he said, well, yeah, we did it, the way we did it, Yushchenko is the guy's name. The way we did it was we used instant messaging. And we said, you know, these guys are getting hungry over here in Sector 9, send a pizza. And so a pizza would arrive so the guys in Sector 9 could keep going, Orange Revolution. And the same thing happened in Egypt. Facebook, Twitter, it overwhelmed the government, and the government finally had to say, okay, we're going to have freedom here. We're going to have a free market. It's not going to be military rule. Libya is a little different right now, but technology is so important. So what we do turns out to have such broad influence around the world. It's making people freer. It's making geographic borders fall. It's improving peace because, I mean, now if all your best friends are on Facebook, you'll find that they are from countries all over the world. So by attacking some geographic country, you're shooting yourself in the leg. So Chile figured this out. Chile wants your poor, your huddled masses, your tech entrepreneurs. This isn't the only one. Every country of the world. Vietnam, I met with the Deputy Prime Minister of Vietnam, who's in charge of finance. And he said, you know what happened in China? He said, it's going to be even better here. We're going to be even freer. We're going to have free markets. We're going to have free trade. You are going to want to be in Vietnam because it's even better than what you've experienced in China. I met the president of, I got to say it right, I said North Korea last time I did this, but South Korea, and he is a businessman, and he's saying, I need to recruit business into my country. How do I do that? So this is happening all over. They're all trying to recruit. That Yushchenko, he said, I know it takes 24 bureaucrats and 6 months before you can even incorporate in Ukraine. That will be 5 days, 1 bureaucrat. Now, it turns out that hasn't happened yet, but at least he was selling the concept. So this is a little bit of an ad for us. DFJ, we are now spread out kind of all over the world because we realize that entrepreneurship's going to happen everywhere. All of those new technologies are going to come from everywhere, and we need to be everywhere. And so we've set up a great network of professionals. So how do you think about your software? How do you think about IT? How do you move markets? How do you become big? Well, for one thing, you have to think way out. You have to think ahead. One is to start a revolution. What's really kind of cool is a lot of these great companies, and some companies inside of companies, have started revolutions. I thought the post office was the post office was the post office. And then Hotmail came along, and why would you want to write a hand letter, put it into an envelope which comes from the trees that you chop down, put it into a car that uses up gas, go into a plane that uses up other fuel, another car. Why do you want to do that when you can just do a quick electronic transfer? Telecom, Ma Bell was everything to me as I was growing up, and that landline was so important. And then things like Skype and cell phones came and just changed the industry completely. People had to adapt. Trade was changed with eBay. The neighborhood. You know, neighborhood used to be my neighbors, my next door neighbor, these guys. I don't even know my neighbors, but I know all these people on Facebook. My son doesn't even think in terms of geographic coverage. He's just all out there in the virtual world. And then research and advertising has been changed by Baidu, Google. This is what the post office used to look like. That's what the phone company used to produce. This is what the ad industry before Baidu and Google used to look like. It was just Madison Avenue. Defense contractors before SpaceX, there's something called the Vulcan, which is a $400 million project of NASA's. And it turns out that SpaceX can do the exact same thing with their Falcon 9 for $40 million, 10% of the cost. So now they're working with NASA. But interesting to see alternatives that happen because of Moore's Law in every industry. Enernoc set up a switching system for utilities so that extra power could be sucked into plants where there was not enough power. And what it does is it keeps those plants from having to fire up another nuclear power plant or whatever. Very exciting. Okay, another thing to think about is when you're creating something, think about a zero business model. So that means that your financial statements should have zeros in them, not in sales or in cash, but everywhere else. So a couple of examples. In inventory and accounts receivable, Amazon figured out how to create a business that shipped books all over the world without holding any inventory or any accounts receivable. They get paid up front, and the inventory just goes straight from wherever it was straight out. So think in terms of projects where you actually shrink your inventory, shrink your accounts receivable. Shrink your engineering costs. Parametric Technologies said, we have such brilliant engineers, we can run this company on 3% engineering. I think it's gone up since then, but that was their plan because then they could use more on marketing and it would make a big difference. Marketing costs, that viral marketing that I helped create because of Hotmail. Spread the word to almost 1 billion people now, all with a zero marketing cost. And people ask, well, why did Microsoft buy Hotmail? Turns out it was their best purchase ever. So the other thing to think about is solve a real problem. Solve a problem that's been bugging you. Solve a problem that you see in your business. Solve a big problem. And make sure it's a big problem. It's not worth it to work on a small problem. Hippocrates figured out that there's a healthcare problem. People don't have access to the information that they need. Doctors don't, and patients don't. So they put it on an iPhone 4, and you can look at your X-ray there, and you can tell the doctor all the drugs you're on, and the doctor can look at it and say, ooh, he's got these symptoms. You know, what's the drug he needs? And there's an energy problem. A lot of these problems are identified in the headlines. The politicians always say, we have an energy problem. Well, it's you guys that solve these problems. It's the engineering people. It's the people with the great minds that solve these problems. So in this case, Solar City figured out that, hey, people are going to need these solar panels put on their roofs. And they did that. Tesla said, yeah, there's a transportation problem that's tied to the energy problem. And we can make a car that goes faster, runs cheaper. It's just better, smoother, cleaner, whatever. And Tesla was the beginning of something quite extraordinary. And I think that there are going to be a series of Teslas that really transform the auto industry. And then communications, I think there's a war problem. People always are going to war. But if we're all communicating, you're not going to want to kill each other. Well, maybe once in a while. But generally, you're not going to want to kill each other. And communications is critical. So all of you who are working on communications systems, go for it. And then be cheap. It's amazing how effective this can be. The greatest companies in the world, most of which are represented here, HP, IBM, Cisco, who am I missing? all of them. Any company that's lasted 40 years or more, they are cheap. They watch every penny. You got to put that meme into every company. You got to put that meme into your company. That makes a big difference. And then be the best in what you do. Remember, technology wins all the wars, so go out there and change the world. Go be a hero. Heroes are people who take long odds at an extraordinary outcome. And if you do that, you'll be incredibly successful. Always think long term, and you'll be great. Thank you.